What is going on, YouTube people? Neo here, doing a little deeper dive into a topic we talked about on the Sunday morning video. In that video, I talked about Acuna and the window, essentially, to dive in and buy these guys post-injury, like season-ending injury or, long-term injury, not just like I'm out with a hamstring for a week or two. So I wanted to kind of go next level on that and look at a couple other players to see if maybe there's a pattern. Now, obviously, this could vary with each individual player to a degree, but there's a little bit of a common trend between a couple of the guys that I looked at. So we're going to look at a couple different players, a couple different cards, and just see if we can unearth anything. Because my general theory is that if you're going to buy the injury dip on these guys, I think you need to do it sooner than what a lot of people think. Like Acuna got hurt, and a lot of people were like, oh, I'll wait and buy him in the offseason and then flip him for next season. My argument has always been is that the play is almost immediately after the player gets hurt. If you're going to make a move, that's when you need to make a move. Because then from there on, it starts going back up again. And we'll get into some data on this, but let me give you what my thought process was behind this. So it's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So like, comment, subscribe. Not sure when this video is going up yet, but smash the old sub button if you haven't. Trying to get to 10K while I'm at the National. Once again, I don't think it's going to happen, but you never know. About 350 away, give or take. So this will post sometime the week of the National. So my general theory on all this is, and we're going to use market movers, once again, link in the description below, coupon code, all that jazz too, to look at the charts and graphs and see if we can see some trends. So here's my theory on this. And I mentioned this is going to be a little bit of a repeat from the Sunday video, but wanted to spend a little bit more time on it here. When an all-star level player, like an Acuna, a Klay Thompson, who we're going to look at, Dak Prescott, a higher end player, when they get hurt, there is going to be a certain segment of people that set those cards aside and just say, I'll deal with that 8, 10, 12, 6, whatever many months until the player comes back. So that's a certain percentage of it. Another percentage of people are going to be like, Acuna's out for the year. I don't want to hold on to this stuff till next March, April, May, June, whatever. I'm just selling it all now. Screw it. Let me get the money out of it. Maybe I can make a little bit of a profit. Maybe I could break even, but I just want the $1, $2, $3, $4,000, $2, $3, $400, whatever it is, back in my PayPal account so I could go do something else with that money versus it's just sitting in Acuna. And a fair, justified point as well. So what happens, in my opinion, is that the people that want to sell immediately. All that inventory hits the market. And the buyers initially are like, I'm going to wait till the offseason. I got plenty of time to pick up Acuna. I'm in no hurry. I'll wait. And we have the classic supply versus demand coming into play. There is way more supply on the market and not as much demand because the guy just did X, Y, or Z thing that's going to keep them out. So prices fall, and prices fall fast. Then that initial inventory dump gets chewed up. And then you have people that aren't really looking to sell holding their stuff. So all of a sudden, the inventory on the market dries up. You have the people that had their stuff listed at the old comps bin/buy it now, still sitting out there. And then the only thing you really see movement on is stuff at auction. And as that inventory supply dries up, there is less inventory on the market, still the same amount of buyers, and now maybe even more buyers because people are like, oh man, Acuna really dipped hard or whatever player. Let me go in and buy some of his stuff and and then there's more competition for less amount of inventory. And then eventually that causes the price to start creeping up. And, then you're off and running until the player comes back. So my theory was that the time to buy is really like 24 to 48 hours to upwards of about 14 days. So within basically the first 2 weeks I think is when you want to make your move. And then, whatever the injury is, sit on it, hold it, flip it later, whatever. But I really think that's the low point, unless there's some huge market shift that, like we saw the last 3 months that caused the entire market to go down in some of these cases. But in general, I feel like 1 day to 14 to 15 days after, somewhere right around in there, once again, mileage may vary, is kind of the perfect window. So I pulled up a few different players. We're going to look at Klay. We're going to look at Dak. I think I pulled Lou Bob and more Acuna stuff. So let's take a quick look at these. So here we have Klay Thompson, 2012 PSA 10 Prism. Now, he was rehabbing his ACL injury, and then right before last season started, tore his Achilles. That happened on, I believe, 11/15 is when that news came out, or 11/17. It's right in here. It was trending normally for right about $1,200. You see a couple $1,200 sales, a few $1,100 sales, right in that $1,000 to $1,200 area. News comes out, he gets hurt. It goes down to $850. There's just one rogue sale here. I'm kind of ignoring this. I'm guessing this is just someone that didn't have Woj bombs turned on or something. So it essentially goes from $1,200, and then over the next couple days drops all the way down to $700 within the course of a week. So 1 week in, and I think, once again, I think the exact injury happened on like the 17th or 18th, 20th, somewhere right in here. So immediately it drops down. On 11/23, we see a $700 sale. $660, $660, $660, $550, went right back up. $708, $550, $525. And this right here, this would have been about 2 weeks post-injury, is the lowest. From here on up, it's back up until it did dip back down again when the whole market pulled back in March and April. But in general, so then we see another $525, and then it starts going back up. $650, $850, and then it falls back down again. A little rogue one-off sale here. Goes back down to $582, but then look, from this $582 point on up, it's just straight, slow, and steady all the way up. Now, the reason I cut this chart off here in early February is because then February, everything went nuts. So then this card really spiked and has since pulled back. So I felt like this was a more accurate representation of what was going on with this card. So it was around a $1,200 card. It lost about 50%, went down to $550, $600. And then right before the whole world went crazy with cards in February, it was all the way back up to $900 prior to the February spike. So not a bad recovery. So essentially, 2 weeks in was your window to buy. Anywhere from the $650 price, and maybe if you got lucky, these couple $550 sales. There's only like 3 that sold for that low. Let's look at Dak. Dak Prescott, I pulled his PSA 10 Optic and his PSA 10 Prism Silver because that's all there was back then. 10.5, he was perfectly healthy, had 2 straight narrow legs. Then all of a sudden he didn't. The base Prism was going for the Silver Prism was going for $788, almost $800, and his Optic was going for $300. This fell hard and fell fast. The base Prism the Silver Prism got all the way down to $400 within the course of a week. From 10.5 to 10.12, it dropped from $800 all the way down to $387. So basically a $400 dip in the course of a week. His base Optic went from $300 down to $150. So once again, almost a 50% drop. And remember, go back to last football season, Dak was playing out of his mind at the beginning of the season. All right, and then what happens? It basically levels out. And in fact, the Silver, the cheapest day that you could have bought it was basically 1 week after the injury on 10/12. That $387 price is the cheapest that card's ever been. Well, not ever, but you get my point. There's this one rogue sale here. I'm ignoring this. I don't know what was going on here on 11/21. So we have a $387, and then it basically floats right around $4 to $450. There's a $430, some $450s, $440, what do we got there? 475, went back down again to 430, back up again to 5, back down again to 415. So it's bouncing around between, let's just call it 400 and 500 bucks. And then we get to Christmas or December 1st. It slowly starts ticking back up again. We have a $400 sale, a 440, a 427. It spikes up 5.5, goes back down again to 400. And then from this 400 sale on 12.9, it's off to the races then. So it was 12.9. It was a little over 400 bucks. Today, current prices, it's 765. So once again, you had your little window here from October. It was 387. December 1st, it was 427. And then it basically went up to 500 bucks and was off and running from there. So you had from mid-October to early December to buy in at around that low point, and then it really started to take off again. So you had a little bit of a window there, and the optic follows essentially the same pattern. We get to December 1st here, early December. It was sitting at around 180, just under 200 bucks. Mid-December, 150. And then it starts slowly creeping back up again. The optic moves a little bit slower than the silver does. And currently, this card's going for 300. So right after the injury, it was going for 100, 150, 120, and is now basically doubled in value since then, with actually it being a little bit higher than that back in the spring when football kind of got a little mini spike and then pulled back a little bit throughout the summer. So same thing. Right after the injury, 157, it went down a little bit more, got all the way down to 100 here, about a month out, 3 weeks out, and then recovered quite nicely. How about Lubob? Luis Robert had a nasty hip injury earlier this season, was going to miss most of the season, is on a rehab assignment now, actually, and should be back fairly soon, and his prices have started to pick back up a little bit. Now, he did start the season struggling. And his prices were already trending down, and then they went down fast when the injury happened. This is his PSA 10 refractor. So back in early April, this was 260, 230, and then bottomed out at 200. Right in here is when he injured the hip. And then off and running from there, 190, spiked up to 200, got all the way down to 155. Actually, I'm sorry, this is where he injured the hip. 512, I believe, was the hip injury right in here. So this was his downward trend prior to the hip injury. And then actually right here, I believe, was the hip injury right in this date, right in here. So we had a 200 and a 215, and then it dropped all the way down to 155. Once again, about a week after the initial injury. I think the injury happened on the 12th or the 13th. And then on the 21st is when it hit its low at 155. And then it slowly spiked back up. Actually spiked back up pretty quick. It dipped back down again. And pretty much floated from there. And then just recently, it started picking back up again. It's back up to 185. So this one did not dip quite as hard. There was an initial dip right here. Then it picked back up and then slowly went down. Got back down to 150 here in late June. And then now has been picking up steam again as people are anticipating his return. So this one's a little different because he wasn't out for the season. It was going to be most of the season, but people had a pretty good idea that he was going to be back during this season, just later. So a little bit less of a buying window there initially, but then it actually bottomed back out again a little bit later. So this one kind of bucks the trend a little bit, but I wonder if it was because it was a more short-term injury and people knew that he was going to be back this year. So it started picking up steam a little earlier and then kind of re-dipped and then went back up again. I don't know. This one's kind of a little different one. Let's go back to Acuna, and this will look pretty similar to Sunday stuff that we talked about. Injury happened on the 10th. So right here, this is the day he got hurt. This was his base chrome, PSA 10. Going for 190. Dipped all the way down 4 or 5 days later to 150. And is currently back up to 175. Whether this holds or not, we don't know. We'll see where it goes from here. But for Acuna's purposes, Your best time to buy was right a couple days after the injury. Day of the injury, 187. Let's just call it 190. Today, I am recording this on 7/25. You guys, Sunday, 7/25. You'll see this later in the week. Up to 175 already with a bottom of 145. So only down 1.8% from just prior to the injury. So not much of a drop there. His refractor, same thing. This is 7/8. It was going for 530. Next one sold on 7/12, a day after the injury, and I believe the day it was announced that he was done with an ACL tear. Dropped down to 414, so almost over $115 drop. Next one sold for 380, and then the next one sold for 370. And as of right now, this 370 sale has been the bottom, about 8 or 9 days past the injury. Next one spiked up. People were like, uh-oh, got too cheap. That spiked way up. That seems a little bit of an outlier at 510. The one after that was 385. That seems more in line. This one was 370, then 385, then 395. So you could already see this looks like it's starting to creep back up again. Not saying it couldn't pull back again, but I think Acuna has enough name value and enough buzz that people are only going to let him drop so far. Let's look at one more on him. We did not talk about this one on Sunday. This is his first Bowman Chrome. Very popular card. Once again, prior to the injury, here's one on 7/10. The day he got hurt, went for 350. He gets hurt the next day, 302. ACL announcement on the 12th, 267. Recovers a little bit. By the end of that week, it's back up to 280. We have one spike to 337, back down again to 260, 255, spiked back up to 300, 285, and 283. So once again, this 250 looks to be at about the floor pricing here, between 250 and 275, and we'll see where it goes from here. I don't expect this card to get back down to 250 again. This was a $600 card at one point in time in the early part of the season when he was going bonkers. Now, you could question Acuna's long-term prospects. Absolutely. ACL injury, does he still steal bases like he used to? A lot of the sex appeal to him was the fact that he was a 40-40 guy or potential 40-40 guy. I don't see him running a lot like next year. To be quite honest, if you bought in on this dip, regardless of the Acuna card, personally, I'm probably going to sell it sometime in January or February, maybe. I don't know. I'm not setting a hard timeline anymore for this stuff. If it gets to the point where I feel comfortable with the amount of money I made off of it, I will move off of it. I'm not at that point now. And the only thing that I bought was a PSA 9 refractor on the cheap. One popped up on Discord, seemed like a fairly reasonable price, and I pounced on it. Low risk investment. I'm only into it for $125. I don't mind holding a $125 card for 6 months if I have to, maybe longer. But if that card got to like, I don't know, 200-ish or something, I would probably just throw it back in the trade pile and look to leverage that extra $75 in value I got on it, and move into something else. So, but the moral of the story is, if you're looking to buy these guys post-injury dip, I think you got about a 2-week window to do it. Not every case. Lou Bob kind of bucked that trend, but pretty much all the other guys were right in line with that. Small sample size as always, and as always, do your own homework and research before you make these plays, and then realize that you might be tying the money up for a while depending on the player. Even though the card starts going back up again, look at Dak. You would have had to buy that last October or November. $400 card for his Silver Prism, $350 card. And if you still have it today, you doubled your money to $700, but it's been, 8 months. You had to hold that card for 8 months to double your money. Now, you would do that all day long if that was guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed in this, but not a bad play, but you do have to have that money tied up in that card for a little bit. So that's all I got for you guys and girls today. Like, comment, subscribe. Do you agree? Is that 2-week window the magic window? At least for most players, for these season-ending / catastrophic injuries. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. We will catch you guys and girls on the next one. Peace.